Welcome to the Pursuit Chronicles, where hidden truths, bold journeys, and untold stories come to life. Get ready to chase the extraordinary. Sarah Bennett tugged the frayed scarf tighter around her neck, ensuring her features were half hidden, as she pushed open the glass door of Brewed Awakening, the first coffee shop she'd ever opened. The familiar scent of roasted coffee beans and warm pastries enveloped her, mingling with the soft hum of morning conversations and the hiss of the espresso machine. No one spared her a glance, which was exactly what she wanted. Her disguise, worn jeans, a faded gray hoodie, a pair of unnecessary glasses, and a knit cap pulled low over her forehead, was convincing. For 10 years, Sarah had poured her soul into this business, transforming a struggling corner cafe into a regional chain with 6 thriving locations. Brewed Awakening was her pride, a place where customers felt like family and employees were supposed to feel valued. But lately, something was wrong. Online reviews remained stellar, praising the cozy atmosphere and friendly service, yet employee turnover had spiked and profits at this flagship location were slipping despite tables packed from dawn to dusk. "Table for one?" a barista asked, her eyes glued to the milk steamer she was wiping down. "Counter's fine," Sarah replied, pitching her voice lower to mask her usual confident cadence. She slid onto a stool at the far end of the counter, where she could observe the entire operation unnoticed. The morning rush was in full swing. Baristas darted between the espresso machine and the pastry case. Customers tapped away on laptops or chatted in cozy booths, and the register pinged with each sale. The shop buzzed with energy, the kind Sarah had once thrived on when she worked the counter herself in the early days. But now, as she watched from behind her disguise, a nagging unease settled in her chest. Something was off, though she couldn't yet pinpoint what. Her gaze soon landed on Clara Thompson, an older woman wiping down tables near the window. Clara moved with a quiet, deliberate grace that stood out against the frenetic pace of the younger staff. Her gray hair was neatly pinned into a bun, and her face, lined with years of laughter and sorrow, carried a warmth that seemed to draw people in. She was likely in her late 60s, her hands weathered but steady as she polished each table to a shine. Sarah watched as Clara paused to help a young mother clean up a toddler's spilled apple juice, crouching despite a noticeable limp. When a customer dropped a stack of napkins, Clara was there in an instant, offering a smile and a kind word as she gathered them up. Her presence was like a steady heartbeat in the chaos of the rush. "What can I get you?" A young barista, his name tag reading Liam, asked Sarah, barely glancing up from the register. "Medium latte and a blueberry scone," Sarah said, sliding a $10 bill across the counter and keeping her tone neutral. As Liam rang up her order, Sarah nodded subtly toward Clara. "She been here long?" Liam shrugged, his lips curling into a faint smirk. "Way too long. Should have retired years ago if you ask me. Moves like she's got one foot in the grave." Sarah's fingers tightened around her mug as she took her first sip of the latte, the warmth doing little to ease the chill his words sparked. She settled in, her eyes following Clara for the next hour. The older woman never stopped moving, refilling sugar containers, sweeping crumbs from under tables, even stepping in to fix a jammed coffee grinder when a flustered barista fumbled with it. Customers lit up when they saw her, many calling her by name. "Clara, you're a lifesaver," one woman said as Clara handed her a to-go lid she'd dropped. "How's my favorite coffee shop angel?" an older man teased, earning a soft chuckle from Clara as she asked about his new grandbaby. But Sarah noticed something else. Liam and another barista, Emma, whose name tag gleamed under the shop's warm lights, exchanged smirks whenever Clara passed, their whispers sharp with mockery. Just before noon, Sarah witnessed an exchange that made her heart clench. A man in a threadbare jacket approached the counter, counting out coins for a small black coffee. His hands trembled slightly, and his voice was barely audible as he realized he was $1 short. Emma, working the register, sighed loudly, her expression a mix of impatience and disdain. "Sir, you need to cover the full amount," she said, her tone clipped. Before the man could respond, Clara appeared, discreetly slipping a few crumpled bills from her apron pocket to the register. "I've got it, Emma," she said softly, her voice calm but firm. The man's face softened with gratitude, his eyes meeting Clara's as he murmured a quiet, "Thank you, ma'am." He took his coffee and shuffled out, clutching the cup. "Like a lifeline?" "That's the second time this week," Liam muttered to Emma, loud enough for Sarah to overhear from her stool. "She's gonna go broke bailing out every sob story that walks in here." Emma snorted, her voice dripping with scorn. "As if she's got money to spare. Bet she lives in that rusty van she drives. Pathetic old lady." Sarah's grip on her mug tightened until her knuckles whitened. The shop's manager, a harried woman named Rachel, whom Sarah vaguely recalled hiring 2 years ago, hurried past with a clipboard, too preoccupied to notice the exchange. Sarah made a mental note to review Rachel's performance. Managers were supposed to catch this kind of behavior. Over the next few hours, she observed Clara cover for 2 more customers, a college student whose debit card was declined, and an elderly woman who miscounted her change, her hands shaking as she apologized. Each time Clara acted without hesitation, slipping money from her own pocket with a quiet dignity that made Sarah's chest ache. But she also noticed Clara wincing when she bent to retrieve a dropped tray, rubbing her knee or wrist when she thought no one was watching. Curious about Clara's story, Sarah struck up a conversation with a regular seated nearby, a retiree, named Diane, who sipped her chamomile tea while flipping through a dog-eared novel. "Why does Clara do that?" Sarah asked, nodding toward the older woman as she helped a barista restock the pastry case. Diane's smile was tinged with sadness, her eyes soft with affection. "Clara's a saint, plain and simple. Lost her husband Tom 3 years ago. Heart attack came out of nowhere. The medical bills cleaned them out, and then some. They had to sell their little house on Cedar Lane, a cute place with a garden she loved. She works to keep going, but her knees are bad, and her arthritis flares up something awful. Won't take handouts, though. Too proud. Says she'd rather help others than dwell on her own troubles. Breaks my heart the way some of these young kids talk about her." Sarah nodded, her throat tight. "Does she have family?" "A son in Portland," Diane said. "He's been begging her to move in with him, but she won't. Says she doesn't want to be a burden. Sends him what little she can spare, even though she's got nothing herself." As the afternoon unfolded, Sarah's unease grew. She overheard Liam and Emma at the register during a lull, their voices low but careless, assuming no one was listening. "Clara's been here 6 years, Liam said, leaning against the counter with a smirk. 6 years wiping tables and playing Mother Teresa. Pathetic." "She's a problem," Emma replied, her eyes glinting with malice. "Rachel's starting to notice the registers off. If we make it look like Clara's slipping cash out, she's gone. My friend needs a job. Younger, faster, doesn't make customers feel like they're at a nursing home." Sarah's stomach churned. They weren't just mocking Clara. They were plotting to frame her for theft. For what? A referral bonus? Petty resentment of her kindness? She stayed until closing, watching Clara linger to scrub the espresso machine, a grimy task the night crew often skipped. Clara moved with a quiet determination, her limp more pronounced as the day wore on. When a young barista accidentally knocked over a stack of cups, Clara was there with a broom, waving off the girl's apologies. "Don't worry, sweetheart," she said, her voice gentle. "Accidents happen." Liam, passing by, muttered under his breath, "Yeah, especially around useless old ladies who should be retired." Sarah's blood boiled, but she kept her composure, maintaining her disguise. When Clara finally left, well after her shift should have ended, Sarah followed at a discreet distance. Clara's rusty van, a faded blue relic from the 90s, sputtered to life and wound through the town's quiet streets, past charming bungalows and tree-lined sidewalks, to a gravel lot behind a strip mall on the outskirts. Tucked among overgrown bushes and discarded pallets sat a tiny, weathered camper, its paint peeling and windows patched with duct tape. A single light flickered inside, illuminating a space so cramped Sarah could scarcely imagine anyone living there. Clara climbed the rickety steps, pausing to rub her lower back before pushing open the creaking door. Sarah drove home, shame washing over her like a tide. How had she missed this? How had she allowed an employee, a woman who embodied the heart of her business, to live in such conditions while working for her company? She thought of the early days when she'd known every employee's name, their stories, their dreams. Somewhere along the way, as the chain grew and investor meetings filled her calendar, she'd lost touch. That night, sleep eluded her. She sat at her kitchen table, the glow of her laptop casting shadows as she made calls to trusted contacts. Her lawyer, a local community outreach coordinator, a private investigator she'd worked with before. By dawn, she had a plan, every detail, meticulously arranged to uncover the truth and make things right. Sarah's heart pounded, but she stayed silent, her disguise keeping her invisible. She spent the afternoon gathering more evidence, noting every instance of Liam and Emma's sabotage. She saw them overcharge a customer and pocket the difference, watched Emma void a $15 sale after a family left, and caught their triumphant smirks when Rachel emerged to check the register, her brow furrowed. By 11 a.m. the next day, the trap was set. Rachel stormed out of the back office, her clipboard trembling in her hands. "We're short again," she announced to the staff, her voice tight with frustration. $30 today, $80 this week. This can't keep happening. Someone's responsible." Liam seized the moment, his tone dripping with false concern. "I saw Clara near the register earlier. Maybe check the tapes?" Rachel sighed, exasperated. "The cameras have been down for months. The owner keeps denying the budget for repairs." Sarah made a mental note to fire her regional supervisor for that failure. Emma chimed in, her voice laced with crocodile tears. "Clara's been at the register a lot lately, for someone who doesn't handle cash." Rachel's shoulders slumped, her face a mix of disbelief and resignation. "Clara, can we talk?" Clara looked up from wiping a table, confusion clouding her gentle features. She followed Rachel to the counter where Liam and Emma hovered, barely concealing their glee. Rachel's voice was heavy with regret as she explained the shortages. "You've been seen near the register when you shouldn't be," she said. "I don't want to believe it, but the numbers don't lie. I have to let you go." Clara's expression crumpled, her eyes glistening, but she nodded, her voice steady despite the blow. "I understand. I'd never steal, but I'll go. Thank you for the opportunity." Liam stepped forward, offering to escort her out, his grin barely concealed. That's when Sarah stood, peeling off her scarf and glasses, her posture shifting from slouched to commanding. "That won't be necessary," she said, her voice ringing with authority, cutting through the shop's stunned silence. Rachel gasped, her clipboard slipping to the counter. "Miss Bennett? I had no idea you were here." "I've been here all week," Sarah said, stepping toward the group, her eyes locking onto Liam and Emma, watching, listening, learning. She pulled a small device from her pocket, its sleek design gleaming under the shop's warm lights. "Rachel mentioned broken cameras. Funny, since I installed hidden ones with audio 3 days ago." The coffee shop fell silent. Customers pausing mid-sip, baristas freezing mid-task. Sarah connected the device to a wall-mounted TV, her movements deliberate. The screen flickered to life, showing damning footage. Liam pocketing cash while overcharging customers, Emma voiding sales. To create discrepancies, and both huddled at the counter, plotting in clear, amplified audio. "If we frame Clara, Rachel will fire her," Liam's voice echoed through the shop. "My friend gets her job, we split the bonus, and no more sad old lady dragging us down." Gasps rippled through the shop. Customers glared at Liam and Emma, who stood frozen, their faces drained of color. A mother at a nearby table muttered, "Disgusting," while an older man shook his head in disbelief. The footage shifted to Clara, paying for customers' shortages, staying late to clean neglected corners, shielding a barista from an angry customer's tirade by taking the blame herself. One clip showed her slipping a muffin to the teenage girl. Another captured her fixing the coffee grinder while a barista panicked, her calm competence a stark contrast to the chaos around her. "This is the real theft," Sarah said, her voice icy with controlled fury. "Liam, Emma, you're Fired. The police are outside to discuss the money you stole. I suggest you go quietly. As if on cue, 2 officers entered, their badges glinting under the shop's lights. Sarah had called them that morning, sharing the footage to ensure swift action. Customers murmured in shock, their anger palpable as Liam and Emma were escorted out, Emma's mascara-streaked face buried in her hands, Liam's protests fading as the door swung shut behind them. Sarah turned to Clara, who stood by the counter, her hands trembling but her posture dignified, her eyes wide with confusion. "Clara, I owe you an apology," Sarah said, her tone softening, though her voice still carried to the attentive crowd. "I failed to ensure you were treated with the respect you deserve. I failed to know your story, your struggles. But I'm fixing that now." She handed Clara a thick folder, its edges crisp and official. "Effective immediately, you're promoted to floor supervisor. The role comes with a significant salary increase, full health benefits, and hours designed to protect your health. There's also a deed to a small apartment 3 blocks from here. Yours, no rent, no mortgage, and your husband's remaining medical bills have been paid in full." Clara's eyes filled with tears as she opened the folder, her fingers tracing the deed, her breath catching at the sight of her name in bold print. "Miss Bennett, why would you do this?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm nobody special." "You're wrong," Sarah said, her own eyes misting as she placed a hand on Clara's shoulder. "You reminded me what this business was meant to be. A place of compassion, not just coffee. You've been living the values I only preached, showing kindness when no one was watching, giving when you had so little yourself." The shop erupted in applause, customers and staff alike standing to honor Clara. A young mother, whom Clara had helped days earlier, stepped forward with an envelope, her children clinging to her legs. "We took up a collection for Clara," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "It's not much, but we wanted to help." Sarah raised a hand, her smile warm but firm. "Every penny of Clara's expenses is covered, but let's use that money to start the Clara Thompson Community Fund to help others facing medical bills or hard times, just as Clara has done for years." Clara looked around, overwhelmed by the faces of customers she'd served quietly for years, people whose names she knew, whose children she'd watched grow, whose struggles she'd eased with small acts of kindness. The teenage girl from the corner booth stepped forward, her voice shy but clear. "Clara gave me food when I couldn't pay. She made me feel like I mattered." An older man, a regular who always ordered a decaf, added, "She remembered my wife's favorite pastry, even after she passed. Clara's the heart of this place." The applause swelled, a wave of gratitude that brought tears to Clara's eyes. Sarah raised her voice to address the crowd, her words carrying the weight of a promise. "Starting today, Brood Awakening is changing. All employees across our 6 locations will receive living wages, comprehensive benefits, and access to an emergency assistance fund. No one who works here should ever have to choose between paying bills and helping others. This is what Clara has taught us, and this is what we'll build together." In the weeks that followed, Clara settled into her new role and home, a cozy, 1-bedroom apartment with a small balcony where she could grow the flowers she'd missed since losing her garden. Though she no longer needed to work, she stayed on, not out of necessity, but because Brood Awakening was her community, her purpose. She trained new staff with the same patience she'd shown customers, her presence a steadying force in the shop. Customers lingered longer, not just for the coffee, but for the warmth Clara fostered, the sense that they were part of something bigger. Sarah kept her promise, staying hands-on across her chain. She met with every manager, reviewing policies, and ensuring no employee struggles went unnoticed. She implemented the new policies company-wide, creating a culture where compassion was as valued as profit. The Clara Thompson Community Fund grew, fueled by customer donations and a percentage of each location's profits, helping families with medical bills, students with unexpected expenses, and single parents scraping by. Brood Awakening became more than a coffee shop. It became a beacon of kindness in the town, a place where people felt seen and valued. Liam and Emma's names faded into obscurity, their actions a cautionary tale whispered in the industry. But Clara's legacy endured, etched into every smile she shared, every small act of kindness that rippled outward. Her story spread, not just through the town but across the region, inspiring other businesses to rethink their values. And every morning, when Clara walked through the doors of Brood Awakening, she was greeted not as the struggling cleaner living in a rundown camper, but as the woman whose compassion had transformed not just her own life, but an entire business, and the community it served. Sarah too changed. She traded boardroom meetings for time in her shops, reconnecting with the people who made her dream possible. She kept a photo of Clara on her desk, a reminder of the lesson she'd nearly forgotten, that a business's true worth lies not in its profits, but in the lives it touches, the kindness it fosters, and the courage to do what's right, even when it's hard. And as she watched Clara laugh with a customer, her limp barely noticeable now that she could afford proper care, Sarah knew she'd found her way back to the heart of Brood Awakening, back to the vision she'd had all those years ago, when a single coffee shop was her entire world. Thanks for watching the Pursuit Chronicles. If the story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the pursuit never ends.